Okay, Eileen, you're alive.
Great. Well, good afternoon or good evening, I should say. And we're just delighted in this miserable January day that you all could join us. We've got a lot of new information to share, but more importantly, we'll be interested to getting all of your thoughts on it. We will be live till 6:25, at which time Julian will be shutting us down. So we've got time for everybody to give us your thoughts and opinions after the presentation. First, I'd like to introduce a few people to everyone. I believe we have Delegate Jones on the call.
She's still in the background, but she is here.
Delegate Jones, welcome. And I believe we also have, at this point, two of our alderpersons, Alderwoman Tierney.
Hi everyone.
Great. And Alderwoman O'Neill.
Yes, hi everyone.
Hi, glad that you could join us. We also have a person that some of you have met, but not everyone has met. And we're very delighted that he's with us today, Matt Fleming, the Director of the Resiliency Authority.
Hello, guys.
Hi.
Yeah, and we'll all be doing a lot of work with Matt. We the city are thrilled. We have some fantastic new directors, thank goodness. First, I'd like to, and many of you already have met these individuals, but for those who haven't, Michael Laplace, who joined us from Princeton, New Jersey.
Hi, everyone.
And who joined us from Annapolis, Maryland, is Marcus Moore.
Good evening, everyone.
And we have one other person who is on his way. He may not be here yet. And that is, I'm looking to see Burr Vogel, who will be the new city engineer and will be heading up the construction of the City Dock project. Burr was coming from the airport. Do we have Burr yet? No.
Not just yet.
But I see we have Delegate Jones as representative. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I just want to come on here and say hello to everyone. My name is Josh Paper. I'm Delegate Jones' Chief of Staff. I'm here representing her office just so we can stay up to date on everything that's happening with the project.
Thank you so much. And everyone should know we've also given a briefing at the end of December to Senator Elfreth and our delegates. So they've stayed very much involved. With that said, I'd like to turn this over to Mayor Buckley, who would like to share the larger picture with all of you of what is happening simultaneously and based on the City Dock as the catalyst for these other actions in the Chesapeake Bay. And I think with that, Brennan, we'll put the mayor on and we'll put up the slides.
Well, I can start while we're working on those slides. First of all, a huge thank you to all the hard work that's gone in to get us all to this point. It is not unappreciated. You know, we know many of you volunteer your time because you want a more beautiful city. We have had a very big week in the city. I want to thank the outgoing governor, Governor Hogan, and Lieutenant Governor Rutherford for their huge support of this project, along with our senator and delegate, and all the money that they've helped get us to this point and have backed the project with. I want to welcome the new governor and the new lieutenant governor. I will be briefing them on this project as soon as the dust settles for them. I know that they have been given some preliminary information on it. I know how they feel about the state capitol that they are in charge of, and their passion to make it better as well. I just returned from the winter conference of mayors. I was lucky enough to be one of 100 mayors that got in front of the president. And it's really encouraging to hear them speak. A lot of the president's cabinet are former mayors, and so they understand what we all deal with. But the encouraging thing I heard is that there is a lot of money coming our direction for infrastructure, and that they understand that mayors know where those infrastructure needs are the most. This project is definitely deserving of those funds. I'm very encouraged by lots of the initial meetings that we were having, trying to redirect those big dollars to the city of Annapolis. And I want to speak to the equity lens that all of you have been putting on this project. We know that this city always considers equity in their design and in their decisions. I want to thank the Heritage Commission for all the work they've done. And I want to show just a few things that we're all talking about weaving into this this new park. So maybe we can move forward on the slides. The money that's coming to us is not only money that we're chasing through the Department of the Interior, but also through the Department of Transportation. I want to point out that Annapolis was the transportation hub when the bridges did not exist. I want to point out that even before the ferries came and people sailed into Annapolis, they came in different ways. We know that, obviously, with our Alex Haley Memorial, our efforts to install a middle passage marker. We know what the contribution to this city was from people that came here against their will and how they helped build this wonderful place. We know that Hamilton came to this port through this port. We know Hamilton was at the Annapolis Convention, a big historic moment in the city of Annapolis's history. But I also want to point out what the future is and look forward and say, you know, we have an amazing opportunity here to draw down transportation dollars for this project as well. We see that the city could be a great place for us to launch a small scale ferry system that could get us to different assets throughout the city. And we know that the county and the visitor center is working on a much broader plan for that. And who doesn't love it when they go to places like Seattle or Sydney Harbor and get to move around on the water? And we feel like that has been an under exploited resource that we have. And this City Dock Reimagine is going to be a great way for us to launch that. We'll go to the next slide. So what those transportation routes that you saw are going to get us to different assets. They're not only going to get us to things that we can be informed on, but they're also going to help us mobilize some of our less fortunate residents. And luckily, we believe also maybe get some of our residents, you know, on the water for the first time. Some of our residents that are maybe not as lucky as many of us on this call who don't have a mom or a dad with a boat or an uncle or an auntie that can get them out on the waterfront. Next slide, please. Of course, you all know that I'm very passionate about the city's ability to save the last 6 acres of the Elktonia Cars Beach area. That project is well in motion. Our Senator Cardin recognized this with an amazing $2 million earmark for us to improve the park. We are now currently chasing money to acquire the more property so we can create a visitor center for Cars Beach, but also a home for Blacks of the Chesapeake so that we can tell that story and that amazing contribution to this wonderful asset of ours, the Chesapeake Bay. Next slide. This is one of the communities I'm talking about, and another thing that we'll be very proud of. I had the new regional director for the EPA out on the water a few months ago. I take her to see all those nice $4 million homes at the South Annapolis Yacht Center, and then I take her around the corner to this point here, where we can only get halfway into that Hawkins Cove because it's silted in, and I point out that behind those trees there are people that live there, and they have very limited access to the water, and they definitely don't have a sight of the water. We are going to correct that when we rebuild Harbour House and Eastport Terrace. We're going to put housing with water views and water access, and also we have another community on the other side of town on College Creek that we're going to do the same thing for water access and water views. Next thing, please. Next slide. And that is the community right there. And I'm going to go through the slides because I've taken a little bit longer than I should. That is on College Creek. Next slide, please. So we know that the programming of this is going to be a game changer for this city. I know when I came into office, some people that I knew said there was nothing for my people or for certain people to do downtown or did not feel welcomed. And I know I've seen all the work that you're doing. I know that it's a highest priority to create a city dock that is welcoming for everyone. I'm so excited about the work that you've done, the work that we are doing. And I tell you that people that put that lens on their projects as we are doing are the ones that are going to be eligible for those dollars so that we can make these improvements and create a beautiful waterfront park for the next generation and the historic gateway to the Chesapeake Bay. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mayor Buckley. It's amazing how using the work of the City Dock Action Committee, how it has really been the catalyst for so much else. I noticed that Alderwoman Finlayson has joined us. We want to say hello and welcome to her. So as you can all see, there's been a lot of progress on many fronts moving forward over the last several months. In terms of what we're going to share with you today, there's a design that takes everything the City Dock Action Committee developed and moves it to the next phase, an activated City Dock Park. Also, talked a lot about the legacy of Annapolis, but the challenge has been how to weave that legacy into the park and the area around City Dock. We'll share that with you tonight. And the garage, of course, the big message, as you know, is that it's on schedule. And next, the financial partnership has been extremely successful. The funds from the P3 partnership have been used for the major upfront costs for design and construction of the City Dock project. And with that, I'd like to have our finance director, who has really been the steady hand through all of this in terms of funding and financing. And before I introduce her, I just see that Senator Elfreth has joined us. Welcome, Senator Elfreth. We're delighted you're with us today. So I'm going to turn this over to Jody Dickinson, our wise and financial wizard, Jody Dickinson, our finance director, and she will be followed by John Hammond, who is chair of the City Dock Action Committee finance team. Next slide.
Yes, hello, everyone. I wasn't the only player on this deal. As Eileen knows, several of us sat through countless meetings over the past more than a year trying to put this financial deal together, which started working with AMRP last fall with trying to draft a concession agreement. AMRP decided to use Medco as the concessionaire, and then Medco did the issuance of the bonds related to the Hillman Garage, and that issue created some funding for City Dock as well. And like I said, it took all of last spring to get the agreements pulled together, but we made sure that they can work on the garage, did not pause, went forward with the demolition and the construction under a pre-development agreement. And the bonds were actually sold by Medco in early September of 22. And in that sale, there were two different bond sales, the senior bond issuance that paid for the construction, the design and the construction and other related costs for the Hillman Garage, and also provided a substantial amount of funding to go into, from a concession payment standpoint, that went into the City Dock project. And at that same time, there was a subordinate bond issue done with AMRP, our private partner, And that provided additional funding, some $13.5 million of concession payment that was deposited into the City Dock project as well. We can go to the next slide. So the next step in this process was, after we were going through this process of the borrowing the funds and realizing the sub debt was going to be an expensive piece of debt, the AMRP partner had allowed us a one-time option, an early option within the first year during construction to refinance that sub debt. And we took advantage of that pretty quickly. In December, we sold the $21.8 million of bonds. Some of that was a taxable piece, 8.3 million, and some of it, 13.5 million, was tax. The first period, I think I said, is that's taxable. The second piece was the tax exempt bonds, and those $13.5 million of the tax exempt bonds are being used for the construction of City Dock. In doing this refinancing and paying off the initial sub debt that was issued by AMRP, we saved total dollars over 30 years of $34.7 million, and that's got a present value closer to $15 million in present value savings for this deal. So it was great advantage to do this refinancing quickly. And to the right there on the slide, you see some of the benefits. And one of them is we were able to combine the refinancing with our annual bond sale, which allowed us to minimize our cost of issuance on the sale by combining the two issues. And I think that's it. And I think now John's going to take over, and he's got some more details as to the bond sale information and the rates, and et cetera.
Thanks, John. And John, right before you start, I want to acknowledge Alderman Gay has joined us, and also former Mayor Moyer have joined us.
Thank you, Eileen, and thank you, Jody. I just want to go through a little bit of the history and structure of this and not get too far down in the weeds. You can see the weeds in succeeding slides, but don't want to dwell too much on those. You can go back and study the numbers if you really are interested. But it's certainly been a circuitous path to get permanent financing in place for this project. But I think we're almost there after encountering a few speed bumps and detours over the past 11 months. As originally envisioned, the financing was thought to be a fully tax exempt issue with investment grade financing made available through the use of a revenue bond. And the revenue bond was to be supported by the parking revenues generated by the Hillman parking garage, and then downtown on-street parking revenues, and was eventually expanded to include some parking revenues generated in the residential parking districts, and also citation revenue from the downtown parking districts. But as the city neared final proposal for financing coming from AMRP, they put forth a proposal that didn't provide for a fully tax exempt issue, and also involved the utilization of subordinated bonds, which were going to be quite expensive to the city. If you turn to the next slide, this is the AMRP proposal basically that was presented, and Larry Shubnell and I, as chairman of the committee, finance committee to the City Dock Action Committee, had serious concerns about this proposal and expressed them to Eileen and David Jarrell in sometimes rather strong terms. But to their credit, they listened. They saw what we were pointing out was going to be a potential problem. They engaged another financial consultant to validate what we were saying, and went back to the table with AMRP and negotiated the provision that Jody mentioned previously of an early call on these bonds that were sold in early September. The biggest issue with these bonds were the taxable pieces, those series B, C, and D, which offered a considerably higher interest rate than the interest rate on the tax exempt bonds, but also had a provision in it for a floating amount of principal based upon the rate of inflation. And as you all know, inflation has been substantial. It's greater than 2%. And the AMRP proposal calls for escalating principal amounts and interest due on those principal amounts and repayment of those escalated principal amounts over the 30-year term of the bonds. So we were very concerned about the overall cost of these bonds over the 30-year period. Eileen and David went back, as I said, and got AMRP to agree to an early call, which would allow the refunding of those subordinated bonds up to 60 days after the substantial completion of the Hillman Garage. The city has taken advantage of that early call and issued their own GO bonds to refund the AMRP subordinated bonds, and as a consequence is going to realize substantial savings on the overall issue of the bonds, which is really necessary because the city was looking to the excess revenues generated from the parking revenues generated downtown to support the transportation system. And under the AMR proposal, it was problematic whether there would be enough revenue to filter over to the transportation system of the city. And that was another reason why it was very important to refund the subordinated bonds and lower the overall cost of the financing plan. And again, to David's and Eileen's credit, they took a lot of time, effort, and some tough negotiating with the AMRP folks to get that call. And the bottom line is we now have an issue of Medco bonds out there that's tax exempt. And then we have an issue of city GO bonds, some of which are taxable because of the various tax law provisions that prohibit refunding taxable bonds with exempt bonds. So there's a lot going on behind the curtain. Some of these subordinated bonds were in essence paid off by utilizing some of the concession payments that were received on the initial AMRP proposal. But the bottom line, these are the bonds that are going to be outstanding for 30 years going forward. And the overall cost savings on a present value basis is over $15 million. And on a nominal basis, it was in excess of $34 million. So it took a long way to get to the end of the road, but I think the end of the road led to a very nice place, and that's our City Dock project.
Well, John, thanks so much. And I also want to thank Larry Shebnell and Nate Bettnam. They did a tremendous amount of work. Again, Jody was the lead on all of this, but we got a lot of support from the City Dock Action Committee finance team. So with that, the very good news, and of course, this good news is hopefully temporary as the mayor is working very hard to get more funding. The good news is that we've gotten about 16.6 million in funding, federal and state. The project with what they call refreshed costs, that is, what are the current numbers after all of the increases in the cost of steel and what have you. The project is a $50 million project. We have been very, very fortunate. The mayor and city manager went to the governor. They went to our delegation, Senator Elfreth, Representative Jones, Shanika, and as a result received $10 million, which has been a major, major portion of the funding. We also got 3.2 from the federal EDA and our senators, Senator Cardin, Senator Van Hollen, and Congressman Sarbanes have brought forth $3.4 million. And that has been the 16.6, which has really gotten us so that we have the funding for all of the early costs of the city dock. And with the concession payment, there's an additional $24 million. So we are very well on our way. And again, the mayor is seeking other sources from the state as well as from the federal government. And separately from this, the Compromise Street project, which is not actually part of City Dock, but it's tied into it. We've received $8 million in funding from there. Next slide, please. So this is the wonderful news. And if you can all see who's on the top of that crane, and he and I argued today whether that was David Gerald next to him or just another person, but that was taken a couple weeks ago. When the mayor went out on the crane, there'll be a what's called a topping off event the first week in February. But the real, standing back, the real success here is what all of you on the City Dock Action Committee chose to do. And that was, you made a very clear decision that you wanted to get rid of the sea of parking at City Dock, that you wanted to relocate 150 cars and the blacktop that goes with it into a green garage. And that is when we go for our funding, a major part, and Matt will be interested in this, of the resiliency is the elimination of much of this blacktop and replacing it with a green park, which is what's making the project overall such a sustainable project. The new garage, and I know all of you know this, but just to toot your own horns on having insisted on this, it has solar panels, charging stations, the ground level is adaptable for active retail use. And all of this meets the historic district guidelines and envelope. Next slide, please. We are on schedule. The last concrete pour was just finished. The solar panel canopy on the roof is underway. The masonry facade is underway. And let's look at the last slide. This is other direction. Here we go. This is a $28.4 million project with all the design, the construction. We are expecting to, assuming no great unforeseen event takes place, supervening events, we are expecting to be open before July 4th, sometime in June. And it's just amazing and a tremendous job that's been done, not only by the contractors, Whiting Turner, the whole team, AMRP, but also great patience for the surrounding neighbors who have been patient and supportive. Next slide, please. The other two elements the other element has been the mobility, and this has been so successful that it will continue beyond the life of the construction. It will continue into the summer and the fall. And the one aspect is the Magenta shuttle, which now is up at, has tripled the ridership from the preceding year and is close to 60,000 riders. And you will be seeing come probably March, you'll be seeing a new electric trolley. It's part of the 100% electric plan that the city has, that the mayor has, and it will be operating, moving people around downtown. It will be operating on the weekends, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday through late fall. And so you'll be seeing these vehicles all over downtown. Next slide, please. You have seen the VIA vehicles. Their ridership is close right now this week to around 9,000 passengers. And so they are expanding. They are expanding into Anne Arundel County, basically from Bestgate Road over to the city. So if people want to go to the mall or the medical center, any of those shopping centers that are off Route 2, VIA will go there, Annapolis Go will go there. And then the city is expanding this down into the Edgewood Road area as well. Next slide, please. And here, Bryce Turner is going to share with you the new designs for the city dock, and Chris Haley will be sharing the incorporation of the ideas from the legacy team and the city dock action team. Bryce?
Great, thanks, Eileen. I wanted to return to this particular slide that the mayor spoke to a few minutes ago. And this has been very important for the design and planning team to understand, to think about all the important aspects of the Chesapeake and Annapolis that really need to be programmed in its city dock and thought about in our new city dock master plan. These historic sites not only were places where people would go from Annapolis, and Annapolis as a gateway, but also Annapolis was the center of commerce, and so much of this traffic that the mayor referenced, came to city dock. So on this next slide, I just wanted to remind everyone of the consensus plan that we all developed with the City Dock Action Committee. It was an incredible canvas from which we could depart and start to really develop these ideas as we gathered more and more information from stakeholders. We've really held very close to the original design concept here, but I'm excited about how it's been developed, and that's what we really want to share with you tonight. This canvas has to incorporate so many different things: resiliency, cultural legacy, history. And so a lot of those things are beginning to inform the next steps that we've taken. And we're very fortunate to have Mahan Reichel, very talented landscape architecture firm, design and planning firm here in Maryland working with us. We're going to show you some of that development in a few minutes. Next slide. But we wanted to have Chris Haley talk to us about the Cultural and Legacy Committee that he is leading and some of the information that is helping to inform our design. And then we'll start to show you how it's been incorporated with the new park design.
Hi,
Chris?
thank you, Bryce. Thank you very much. Part of what we really benefited from with the City Dock Legacy Committee is just the thoughts of who all should be included, which is the African American community, the Greek community, the persons who were a part of our community as watermen, or people who were working from the stores and working in all sorts of different occupations at the city dock area. It's changed through times. And I think part of what that helped us realize is that initially the pressure was on us to come up with one single fountain or one single statuary or one single image or fountain that would have to incorporate all these ideas and all these different communities. And of course, that's pert near an impossible task to come to that, to make everyone satisfied. Because really what we wanted to do to make it a representation of inclusivity and inclusion, and as Bryce mentioned, as we have in the slide here, the legacy of all the different persons, all the different communities, all the different players who have contributed to the history that has made Annapolis what it is today. And so because of that, we have now thought more in terms of using what we have, using what we've developed, and using all the insight that those members of our community have expressed to us. And so within that, part of this idea will be shared with how we replace the specific siting or placement of the Alex Haley Memorial, and how probably in a year or so, we're going to have the permanent UNESCO Middle Passage marker, and incorporating the Chesapeake, Waterman Chesapeake, as another element of this gateway to the water, from the Chesapeake to the rest of the world, and the commerce that we had from the beginning of our settlement here. the fountain and the gazebo and just all the different parts that you see in the slide that you just saw will all be representative of this very wide canvas that is our Annapolis community, which is the capital of course, the state of Maryland, and opens us up to so much. And some of these are just examples that our design team are going to look at further with more input from the team to see where do we think these ideas can be best implemented with verbiage, with text, with visuals, with interactive capabilities, so that we really get a sense that everyone is included within the final creation that we have for City Dock, and not just one community over another. So it's really been, I think, a wonderful progress that has been made. And I think all of you, when you see the specifics of what we were, what we are now, to what we hope to, what we will complete within the next couple of years, it's very exciting, and it's very forward moving, and it's very positive in that the vision that we now see, thanks to all the input, is one where we don't necessarily have to think about what we're going to cut out. We're thinking about what we're going to keep in and embellish.
Great,
Chris,
thanks,
thanks
Chris.
so much. Bryce?
So we have a lot to build upon, and we have a lot to incorporate here, especially in terms of messaging and theme that we want to carry through. So this version of the plan that you're looking at, we've got some new things to share with you in just a few minutes. But of the things that Chris mentioned, we want to think about how do we tell that story at City Dock, all the way from Donner Park at the bottom here, all the way around to the new Dock Street Park and the Susan Campbell Park. So we have certain infrastructure that we can work with to tell the story. One, of course, is with in the very first image at the top left, you see how we can start to incorporate some messaging on steps. We're going to have a lot of changes of elevation here as we build up from the water's edge to elevation 8 for flooded proofing and resiliency purposes. We're going to have a lot of horizontal surfaces, which we think could be very rich with maps, graphics, etc. We also have the opportunity for vertical artwork, and we're exploring how some of that can happen here at the dock. So on the next slide, and we call this kind of interpretive signage and messaging, and I think everyone's probably seen in some modern landscape parks recently how that's been done very well, and Mahan Reichel's done some great examples. So we now take this and we start, okay, how do we break this down further categorically? So closest to Dock Street, we began thinking about, where you can get an active park, and it seems to make the most sense at the edge of the city there, if you will, that we start to have our most active components. And then we have the lawn. And we're making some modifications to that lawn, but it will certainly be a place of respite, a little bit more of a casual place where you get closer and you start to see more views of the water. It's going to be very exciting. We think there's a great opportunity here for a fountain that we've always talked about. And that area of the fountain can be a place combined with a pergola where we maybe think a little bit more about some of the people who have arrived at Annapolis City Dock, where they come from, and some of their backgrounds. And then the gateway at Susan Campbell Park, where you get closest to the water's edge. You can actually have a great view of the bay and looking out through the Severn River and the creek. And that should be, we think, a more forward-looking opportunity with sculpture and other artwork to help kind of tell the story there. So what I'd like to do now is, with this kind of framework in place, ask Scott Reichel to take us through some of the examples that are happening at each of these and kind of unveil a new park design that we have for you.
Thanks, Bryce. So we go to the next slide, please. So the active temporary, it's temporary only in that everything there is movable. We want, one of the things that we have to design into the park is flexibility. And we need to be able to put up the stage for the Singer-Songwriters Festival. We need to accommodate the boat show. So this area, we want it to, because it's the first thing that residents come to, we want it to include all of the things that will engage people and attract people and connect back to the city. But all these things will be able to be moved. So you look at the images down below, you can see that there's seating, landscaping, ping pong tables, seesaws, swings. All these things will be able to, even the trees in the pots can all be moved. And so this space really will become the active space in the park as the first thing that you come to. So we see it as a place that really attracts residents to come down, and it's a gathering space. We go to the next one. And these are just some of the images that show you the idea of perhaps putting plans of the city in the paving is a way to celebrate the legacy. Some of the examples of trees in movable pots and planters. These are all modular, and while they can look like they're big, they actually are put together, and it's a great new element that you can use in park situations that allow you to have that flexibility. You can see more of the ping pong tables. You can see the Singer-Songwriter Festival is almost at that spot, that stage, and how big it is. You can see the Capitol behind it, looking up Main Street, how big that stage is and what we need to accommodate. And this works perfectly because we then have the lawn behind it that's open and that whole area that we can open up. So we go to the next one. So the lawn area we're seeing is sort of the passive recreation area that provides basically green waterfront space for folks that may not have a waterfront lot and that don't live on the waterfront. They have an opportunity here to come down, read a book, sit in the shade. One of the things that we heard a lot about was shade down at the City Dock Park, that currently it's super hot. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to get away from it. And so the lawn, we feel, with the ring by trees will be a perfect space for that. It's also a place where you could throw a Frisbee if you wanted to. So it's read a book. It'll have movable furniture, probably some Adirondack type chairs, but you can bring a blanket, picnic out there. And we see that as another continuation of that active park. If we go to the next one. This is showing some of the elements as we raise up we're raising up for the resiliency to get to elevation 8. It creates a lot of walls, as Bryce spoke about, which gives us a lot of opportunities to incorporate the legacy, to celebrate the industriousness of the city dock and the history. So these are just some examples of how we can do that, and it'll help us really energize those edges that we're bringing up to get to that elevation, that elevation 8. Next. And the fountain area, the legacy fountain, is really, we're looking to how we can use this to celebrate the industriousness, the history. We wanted to do a lot of things, and we also wanted to be an active fountain. So what we're proposing is a fountain that kids will be able to go play in, and it will be recessed. And so the idea is that when we have the boat show or the Singer-Songwriter Festival or any other type of festival, you'll be able to cover over that with just simple plywood inserts, and it'll be flat. We could even get an ice rink over in this area. We go to the next one. And of course, it will be accessible, so we'll have a ramp down to it. But not unlike the that's Washington Square in New York, it will have seating that'll allow all the edges, so parents can sit at the edges, they can sit at the top, the kids can play in it. We won't have a depth of water like that's shown in that upper left. It'll be more like just a scrim. But the idea is that kids will be able to play in that. And again, we have that whole surface to animate and decide what sort of things can go at the bottom of the fountain. So when it's dry, it's a plaza. When it's turned off in the dead of winter, it will still have some interest. So we go to the next one. And then the pergola, this is really a stage area, but in days when there's not anything going on, it becomes a place to sit under in the shade. You'll be right there next to the fountain. We'll have tables and chairs there that'll be movable, and it becomes interactive. And we see it as a real opportunity to maybe using the trusses and the trellis structure to maybe recall some of the ships that came in and out of Annapolis, like schooners, skipjacks, the cargo ships that brought kidnapped Africans to the shores of Annapolis. And these, we think it could be a really interesting piece of art, and that you can see the one that this is in Eager Park, lower left, that's in Eager Park at Johns Hopkins. But you can see how you could begin to develop sort of this really interesting piece of architecture that would serve the purpose of a stage. And I'll just point out that it can work both ways. So if you have a smaller event, it could be staged under the pergola, and then you could face out to the gateway, which is the Gateway Park we're showing there, Susan B. Campbell, or you could face out to the fountain area if you had a larger event. So it really gives you two opportunities for stages. It could face either way. Both views are great, right? I mean, that's the great thing about Annapolis, is that if you look back at the city, it's an amazing view, and if you look out from the city, it's an amazing view. So it's a rare opportunity. Go to the next one. This is just some of the ideas. You can see that when you look at the plans of ships, we can abstract some of those ideas into how that trellis structure could look. And again, also how dramatic it'll be at night when it's lit. It'll be really this thing that you look out to the park and it'll be pretty stunning. Next. And Susan B. Campbell Park, really, you know, we're seeing it, it's kind of the gateway to the bay. It's the first thing you see as you come in from if you're sailing in, and it's the last thing you see if you're sailing out. And we really are looking at this to be sort of the future of the bay and celebrate the resiliency and sustainability. We'll have bay landscapes there. It's also the launching area for the tourist ships, the tourist boats that pick up folks there. We see an opportunity in the upper right corner for a kinetic sculpture that again would have something to do with the legacy of the industriousness or the history of the dock area. And we also see it as a way to get down to the water. So it's one of the places where we can actually lower the edge and get down closer to the water. Whereas, and this area, this area will actually be lower than the lawn and fountain area. So if we go to the next. And these are just some ideas of some of that kinetic sculpture that when the wind goes through these, if you could see it, if you Google it and look at a video of these, they're pretty spectacular. And there's lots of ways that an artist, I'm sure if we give an artist the idea, they can run with it and come up with something pretty amazing. And again, will be an iconic element that you'll see from the entire downtown area. And then you can see also on the right, the idea of getting down closer to the water. Next. So here's the new design as I've walked you through each of those spaces. So starting from left to right, Left is that activated park. We've got lots of trees in there, basically a grove, swings to the south. We've got the ping pong tables, lots of seating elements there. You step up, you're stepping up about 2.5 feet to that area. And there's also ramps, obviously, for ADA accessibility. And if you see the two rings that the two sidewalks that sort of intersect and ring the fountain, we think what's great about that is it actually, the way they circle around, they actually cross over and connect to the sidewalk at Craig and Dock Street. And then they also connect you to the promenade. So it really brings you into the park and circles you around the fountain. You can see the fountain there is in the center. There's steps down to it. There's a ramp to get down to it on the planned southern edge. You can see the pergola next to that. And again, this area is all up at 6.5. And then there are walls that at the edge, seat walls that bring it up to 8. And then Susan B. Campbell Park at the end with landscapes on either side, another open lawn space, and a wider open deck area that allows for people to congregate that are waiting to get on and off tour boats. Also just allows you to engage the water. It's besides dinghy dock, it's the only place you can get down close to the water. And then also I should just point out that we are making that upper end of Dock Street from Craig to the water a curbless section. So that's really becoming part of the park. It's really like a plaza that is extending up to the face of those buildings there. So if we go to the next one. This is just a diagram showing the flood barriers that we are proposing in the different areas. And without going through them, you can see we're employing several different types where some of them are just walls that are always there, like some of our seat walls, which is in the magenta. The passive horizontal barriers are ones that flip up. Passive vertical barriers, it's literally a wall that's flush with the paving and comes up as the water comes in, it actually raises up. That's in the yellow. And then we only have one area where we're showing a glass wall above a low brick wall at Donner Park, so it'll maintain views through that area. So I think that's concludes the presentation.
Thanks so much. Terrific job. And now we are looking forward to hearing everyone's comments, thoughts, ideas, observations. I believe, and Julian, why don't you jump in? I believe people just need to raise their hand and then I can call on you.
Yeah, if you just want to raise your digital hand at the bottom of your screen.
You know, Eileen, while we're waiting for people to raise their hand, I just wanted to mention that we're so excited about this plan and with the circular fountain and some of the circular walkways that pass through there. You know, Michael Dowling has been very active in our design committee, and when he saw an early sketch of this recently, he talked about it, and it reminded him of the Nicholson plan, you know, for Annapolis with our various circles and roundabouts. You know, it makes a lot of sense and it feels right there, I think, and we think so too.
Great. I'm waiting for any comments or thoughts. I know we got started, Senator Elfreth, before you joined us. Did you have any comments you wanted to share?
Eileen, thank you. Sorry, I was stuck in committee. It's still early in the session, but we've started to get to work pretty quickly. Just thank you to everybody for the progress. It's incredible to see. And as both the senator for the district, but also equally as importantly, a neighbor, I live on most of the maps that we've seen today. You can see my house. I greatly appreciate all the work that this community has put in to find consensus and really get creative and make something that we can all be incredibly proud of from a local, and frankly, it will be a national model. So thank you all.
Great, thank you so much. And I see I'm delighted to see Carlotta on the call today, and we have a question from you. And then after you, Sean O'Neill has a question.
Carletta, I don't have a question. I simply want to say that my breath has been taken away. I am so grateful. When we were working in the committee, the original City Dock committee, it just seemed like a dream. And so we just sort of put it all out there, and being just a little bit cynical, we'll see what comes back. What do they come up with? It's all there. Our dream is all there. Especially one of the things that we talked a lot about in that committee was balancing having City Dock be a place for those who actually live, and may I add, pay taxes here, and for tourists and people, who might want to come. And it's there. It is there. Also, I am so grateful for the ways that our history, the good, the bad, the ugly, is going to be represented there. Having water access to people who have never had water access before in the housing developments is huge. I cannot wait for children who have never paddleboarded or never swam in the water before to be able to experience that in their own hometown. I just want to say thank you. I can't believe it. I cannot believe everything that we sweated over is there. And for those of you who made the financing happen, thank you, John Hammond. I am glad that you are one tough dude. I'm just so filled with gratitude right now. Thank you, Share.
Thank you. You're going to make me cry, which I don't do often. Thanks so much for your comments. Sean.
Hi there. First, I want to say great job. It's a beautiful design. I have a question. I served on the finance committee of this, and I thought originally we had talked about the hotel tax financing quite a bit of this. What happened to that plan? Is it still on the table, or where are we with that? John.
Jody, do you want to answer that, or do you want John to make a comment on it?
I think that was probably John is the better one. I think that idea was put forth at a time, I may have been before I started here, about whether or not we could increase the occupancy tax to help cover the cost of some of this. But I'll have John expand on that.
John or Larry?
Well, the hotel tax sort of became a political football in some regards, and wasn't really getting a lot of momentum. So the utilization of parking revenue bonds got into the picture, and that's where we are. I still feel that from the city standpoint that utilization of the hotel tax is a way for the city to enhance some of its revenues and to use it to promote some of the costs of operating this park downtown, which is going to be a significant cost on an ongoing basis, given the maintenance that's going to be required. I love the idea of a lawn, but I've got a lawn at home too, and it requires a lot of attention. So,
yeah, John, I've been over here making notes about the maintenance and how we're going to be able to maintain this after it's created. But I got some ideas to float out there. But some of the background on the idea of occupancy tax, I think that was first put out there when we were going to do this project with the Resilience Authority through the county city authority. And that was going to be one of the funding mechanisms for the authority. And after it became a city project, we changed the focus to be the P3 bond issue approach.
And I also see that Burr Vogel has joined us. Burr, I introduced you earlier. You may want to, but you were not there yet. You may want to say hello to everyone. Well, Burr is on the line. He's, doesn't look like we're going to be able to get him to say.
Eileen, I had just stepped out for a second. I'm back. Could you repeat the question?
I said I introduced you earlier to everyone as heading up all of the construction for this project. I just wanted to give you a chance to say hello.
Hi, everyone. It's great to be part of the team and look forward. It's a very exciting project.
Thanks. And I also see Carl Snowden has joined us. Glad you could join us, Carl. Sometimes there's a delay when I call out like this. So let me ask, do any of our council people or anyone else have any comments that you would like to add, Karma or Ellie?
I was going to ask if Mr. O'Neill could mute himself because I'm getting feedback when Eileen talks. I think it's coming through his speaker.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you, Eileen. I'm going to restrain myself and not talk about the budget or anything like that. I think in the January doldrums and in this post-COVID world, it is so refreshing to see this as a gathering place for human interaction versus a car parking lot, and transforming it back to that time when City Dock was a bustling place, you know, with watermen and sort of that messiness, but that human interaction. Green space is a common denominator for all people. So it's very exciting. And also, speaking of the infrastructure, we, you know, remember what this is for, sea level rise. It is a perfect marriage of, you know, in architectural verbiage of form and function. The form being the architecture and the function being the infrastructure that's going on underneath it. So again, thank you for having this. It's very timely, and congratulations to all of you that have gotten us this far. And also exciting news about the topping off of Hillman.
Yes, very. I also see I believe Sheila, Karma, and Dewan are on the call. If any of you would like to make any comments.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Alderman Gay. It was a great presentation. I'm excited to see the project come to fruition. I appreciate the detail to the history of African Americans in the city of Annapolis. I hope as the project moves along that it is taken into consideration. And if cuts are necessary, that is not one of them. I do just have two concerns. The first being, we did have an opportunity on a council field trip to go, oh gosh, we were just outside of DC, still in Maryland. But we went on a small tour. When we toured facilities with the splash pads, they did talk about the excessive expenses to maintain the splash pads. So I did have a concern about that. And of course, the Dock and Randall intersection, it doesn't look like any lights are there, which means that the pedestrian and vehicular traffic was probably still be coming to some sort of congestion there. So if those two things could be addressed, but overall, this is a fantastic project and appreciate everyone's work.
Thanks so much. Anyone else? Well, it's been, like I said, Reverend brought me to tears. We have one more up.
Yeah,
Mary
Mary.
Wilson. Mary.
Thank you, Eileen. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes, we can. Great. I'm with the Annapolis Boat Shows, and we have been watching this project very excitedly, anxiously, nervously. I think there's so much great here, and I love a lot about the drawings, but a couple of things that I have questions about are why we are continuing to allow Donner Park and Susan Campbell Park to flood. And also what I'm hearing through all this is lots of seating and walls and elevation changes. And those are all exciting. But I have to say, as the person who's responsible for making sure we can have boat shows in this space, they're somewhat terrifying because it's going to be all about placement and how we can work around them. And we expect that we're going to redraw all the boat show plans. So this is not me standing up and saying, we don't want to move our tents. We expect everything is going to move. But this is the first time that we've seen this iteration of drawings. And I do believe the design team listened to us when we met, but the drawings are a little bit scary on some fronts. So we are looking forward to meeting and to adjustments being made on our side and on the side of the planners to make sure that we can still have successful shows. And I also worry about that grass because we're going to kill it. So, I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat that.
Well, and maybe I can just reply to a little bit of that, Mary. Thank you. I think there is a lot of good stuff here. We know that we're going to have to work really closely with you like we have in the past, but to develop a new plan, help you develop a new plan for the boat show that's going to work with this new geometry. We don't want to maximize the number of walls. We want to minimize the number of walls and barriers, really, but we inevitably have some because of the changes in elevation for sea level rise. I guess the reason that Susan Campbell and Donna Park are lower, two reasons really. One, for somewhat with efficiency for flood proofing, but also because we've still got to have boat and dinghy boat access without getting too tall, if you will, right at the water's edge. So that's kind of what's driven that, thus far. So I know that the boat show is going to have to change, but Mahan Reichel's really thought a lot about this active park and how everything can be moved. And it's may take some forklifts to move some of it, but that can be done and will be done and will need to be done for the boat show. There was one other piece I wanted to respond to. Maybe it was about the fountain that can obviously be leveled out.
The lawn. Was it the lawn?
Yeah, the lawn. Thank you. I just wanted to mention with the lawn, one of the reasons that we went to this new geometry for the lawn was with input from several people, some really important people, but was partly because of the fact that if we do have to replace some of the lawn, we want it to be in smaller sections. And if we do have to go to some other type of turf or paving, then it's going to be more manageable in smaller areas. And so we kind of got rid of the big soccer field for that reason, if you will.
Great.
And Scott, I don't know if Scott has anything else you want to add.
Well, just that we've done a lot of research to see if we could maintain the lawn and figured that it really probably will get trampled and be replaced. And that was one of our thoughts. We had received comments that the lawn was too big in the past, and so we said, well, let's move the fountain and shrink the lawn down. And I think that's so we've it's like Bryce said, it's probably an annual replacement of sod.
Well, I thank you very much for all your work on this. It really is beautiful. And as long as we all sit at the table together, and it might come down to moving things by a foot one way or the other. And I understand the need for walls, and if they're in the spots that we can design around, or we can talk about that. Yeah. I think it's going to be great. And I think it's a space that's been underutilized in a lot of ways. And to be honest, there are parts of it that look like they will be easier for us than current configuration is. And obviously less flooding is better for all of us. So we're really excited about it. This drawing, some of it was a big surprise to us, but I think that when we all sit down, I think Eileen's going to schedule something and we'll keep working forward. But thank you very much. And thank you for including us in the process.
Well, thanks very much to everyone. The mayor would like to have us all get together in person at Chop Tank. I'm not sure when we do. It'll probably be the end of March or very beginning of April, so that we can see each other and work together in person the way we did prior to COVID. And during the next month or so, we will be focused on the design of the park in conceptually what we've shared with you today. And then as we move forward later in the spring, we'll be working and looking for everyone's input on the buildings, the new buildings that will be forthcoming, the waterfront welcome center, as well as ultimately looking at the programming. By the time we get into the summer, we're going to want to hear from all of you. And I see several people in addition to Ellen Moyer on here who will be interested in the programming as well. So with that said, I'm so glad everybody got together. We will look forward to seeing you in person within about 2 months, and hopefully we'll be able to have some drinks and enjoy each other's company at that time. And I want to thank our team for the incredible job you've done. Thank you very much for all the hard work.